Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our Thursday briefing regarding COVID-19 and the efforts that we're making across Tennessee to mitigate the spread of the virus, to successfully, safely reboot our economy, and the efforts that are being made by many of you across the state to assist in these efforts. Today we're going to have reports from Department of Labor, from Department of Education, Department of Environment and Conservation. Before these reports, though, I want to give an update on our efforts in testing, our efforts to get the word out to Tennesseans about how to stay safe, and a preview of our first round of industry guidance that we'll be releasing tomorrow. As we prepare for our second week of expanded COVID-19 testing, we want to encourage every Tennessean who isn't feeling well or who has been in contact with someone who is COVID-19 positive to get a test. Last weekend, more than 11,000 Tennesseans took advantage of free testing across the state, and they were reminded that when in doubt, get a test. The list of those locations for this upcoming weekend is on our website, and we encourage you to look at them and to get a test if you think you need a test. Maria and I will actually be in Shelby County at our testing facility in Fraser to be there on the ground and see these efforts in action. During this pandemic, we have tried to capture the attention of every Tennessean in our state, 6.8 million people across 95 counties. And our PSA campaign, Do Your Part, Stay Apart, has done just that. It has tallied over 20 million impressions in less than 30 days, and it includes Tennesseans from all across the state, each one of them helping to join us in this fight against COVID-19. As we look to reopen our state and to get Tennesseans safely back to work, we welcome Garth and Trisha Yearwood to our efforts around our public service announcements. As Trisha and Garth will tell us, every Tennessean has played a role in slowing the spread of the virus. You have stayed home, you have helped save lives, and we need you to continue to do that. Government has a role to play, but it's the personal actions of each of us that will keep our neighbors safe and successfully continue to flatten the curve in our state. Eddie George, who kindly joined our PSA campaign, announced this week that his father is battling COVID-19. Our hearts and our prayers go out to the George family and to every Tennessee family who is weathering difficulty and tragedy because of this virus. Much of our time this week has been dedicated to economic recovery and to the next steps that we are considering in our phased reboot of Tennessee's economy. We're working around the clock to get Tennesseans safely back to work in 89 of our counties, with the majority of businesses in position to begin opening their doors next week. However, as we consider federal best practices, we want to be very clear that not every industry will be in a position to open safely immediately. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be holding a special press briefing about to debut our first round of industry guidance for the restaurant and retail industries as we aim to get these businesses open safely at 50% capacity next week. Restaurants opening at 50% capacity and following the guidelines will be allowed to open on Monday. Retail outlets operating at 50% capacity and following all the guidelines will be allowed to open next Wednesday. We will be sharing more details with you about this tomorrow morning as we announce our first round of safe reopening guidance. I'd now like to ask Commissioner McCord to come up and give his report regarding unemployment and unemployment benefits across Tennessee. Commissioner McCord.
Thank you, Governor. It's no secret that we faced some challenges over the last few weeks, and really you can group those into three major ones. The first one was we needed to scale our current unemployment insurance system and add the $600 federal benefit to that. The second one is we needed to build a set of systems that didn't exist before, so new systems to distribute benefits such as pandemic unemployment assistance, which would be to the sole proprietors and 1099 folks in Tennessee. And finally, we needed to upgrade our IT system in the face of sudden and substantial increases in volume. So report on all three of those phases here today. In terms of scale, so far this week, we've paid 225,000 individuals benefits for unemployment insurance. That includes the $600 payment from the from the federal government, and additionally includes the back week that we missed on the front end. So we've paid the back end, and we continue to pay that benefit at a pretty good rate. Our federal standard is to pay 87% of claims within a 21-day period, and we've been paying since last week. That percentage is not 87%; it's 98% within a 21-day period, which is great news unless you are one of the individuals who's expecting the PUA dollars to come your way. And so that money and that system has been built, the money has been received, and we will start as early as tomorrow distributing that benefit so that those folks will begin to see payments into their accounts early next week and throughout next week. In terms of upgrading, our system experienced a 2,000% increase in people on the system, which it was not capable of handling. So we upgraded, and we're upgrading again here in the next day or so that we can handle that volume. And additionally, we've added over 300 people on customer service claims so that we could help with the phone volume, including adding a couple of extra contract call centers that we're working with as well. The volume has remained incredibly high, and we know it's frustrating to try to get in touch with us. We feel very good, and we know that the root cause of a lot of these calls are the system performance and the questions about the PUA benefit and when that's going to come and how that's going to happen. So we feel by addressing those root causes that our call volume will get down to a more manageable level, and we can get back to the customer service levels that we are accustomed to. And additionally, we're being proactive in communicating now with the systems that we have and anticipating questions and answering those questions at the point of the problem. And we'll also begin to reinstitute our chat function so that we can help in different channels as well as we go forward. I've been asked more than once this week, what would you say to the people of Tennessee waiting on their benefits? And I would say we know there's frustration and there's worry, and we understand that. It's understandable. But we're working as hard as we can, as fast as we can, and as differently as we ever have to get those benefits to you. So with that, Governor, I'll conclude my report. Thank you.
I've asked Commissioner Schwinn from our Department of Education to give a report regarding child well-being that we discussed in an earlier briefing, and also guidance for commencement ceremonies, which we were asked about at an earlier briefing.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor Lee, for inviting me back today to provide an update on education in Tennessee. Last week, Governor Lee made the recommendation to keep schools closed through the remainder of the year. It wasn't taken lightly, and we appreciate the leadership on this topic. While students will not be returning to classrooms this year, we know that students, their families, schools, communities, they all want to be able to celebrate the hard work of our students, but most importantly, celebrate the hard work of our graduating seniors. That's why today, the department has issued new guidance to superintendents across the state to help them decide whether and how to conduct virtual ceremonies or in-person ceremonies over the following months. This guidance will include information on social distancing, following proper protocols, and prioritizing the health and safety of our graduates, their families, and the communities who want to celebrate them. The guidance offers ideas, considerations that districts may utilize to craft their own local plans and to conduct ceremonies if they so choose. You can find this guidance. It's posted on our website, and it is also something that we're encouraging districts to share with one another. We've had a lot of creative ideas. We will continue to update that guidance as we get more information and appreciate the commitment that our districts have to celebrating our seniors. It's a big milestone, and we know how important it is to our families. Another important update, newly released, is the Federal CARES Act, and that provides one-time relief funding for our Tennessee schools and districts. Just hours ago, the U.S. Department of Education released and communicated the application for those funds much faster than anticipated. It will be critical that we use those funds wisely, these one-time funds wisely, and invest them in local districts to support recovery and to plan for related impacts for next school year. We stand ready to work with our districts and our schools to ensure decisions are made that will be in the best interest of our children, our students, our educators, and our school staff and communities. And then finally, I want to provide an update on the COVID-19 Child Wellbeing Task Force. The goal of the COVID-19 Child Wellbeing Task Force is to ensure that the needs of our Tennessee children are met throughout the period of school building closure and into the summer. We know that it is important to empower our local communities meaningfully in a way that they can engage with their school districts, their communities, families, and students. The task force will operate to develop a set of action items that support local communities and can be utilized over the next 3 months to address areas like nutrition, health, employee wellness, return to school, social and emotional and physical well-being of all of our students as it relates to academic supports going into next year, and then certainly as we think about what return to school will look like for students who have been away for 5 to 6 months. We are incredibly grateful to those who have shown interest to date. We expect to have the list of who will serve on the task force and related subcommittees throughout the first few weeks of May. And we also expect related toolkits to be provided to our local communities for implementation this spring and summer. Thank you again to everyone who has spent so much time, love, and energy on behalf of our schools and most importantly on behalf of our students. They're counting on us, and I continue to be very, very grateful. So thank you. And thank you.
Commissioner David Salyers is here. As you know, we will be reopening state parks tomorrow, and he'll share his report regarding that reopening.
Thank you, Governor. We are absolutely thrilled to be opening most of our state parks tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. The outdoors is an important stress reliever for Tennesseans who've been cooped up and isolated a little bit. So several studies have shown that being outdoors and being in nature really do us a lot of good mentally and physically. So we're very excited about that. And we're going to strongly encourage everybody to continue the social distancing practices. Of our 56 state parks, Cummins Falls State Parks will not open. Seven Islands State Birding Park will not open, and Lamar Alexander Rocky Fork State Park will not be open. But there are a few guidelines to be mindful of. Stay home if you are sick or do not feel well. Maintain at least 6 feet of distance between you and other visitors. Stay local. Visit parks that are near you and only a short distance from your home. Visit early. Consider visiting earlier in the day so you can change plans if a park is full. Tennessee State Parks is probably going to have to limit some access or the number of visitors that are allowed into the areas. Plan ahead. Many state parks buildings and facilities are closed. Plan to bring your own snacks, water, and hand sanitizer. Prepare for limited or no bathroom access. Some restrooms will remain open, but others will have to be closed. Please bring a mask and wear it when in the presence of other visitors. As always, help keep our parks beautiful. Carry your trash out with you or dispose of it in an appropriate container to help keep our parks litter-free. Adherence to these guidelines is going to be critical for us to keep our parks open and for the well-being of our guests and our staff. All overnight accommodations through April 30 have been canceled. Be aware that overcrowding may cause entire parks or portions of that park to close again. Please don't use playgrounds. Please do not gather in groups of 10 or more. We look forward to opening the state parks. We're eager to serve Tennesseans, but we need everyone's cooperation in order to stay open. For updates and more information on our parks, visit tnstateparks.com.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Dr. Piercy, would you come up and give a health report, please?
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I have a relatively brief report this afternoon, but did want to mention that our case count is 8,266. which is a 5.4% increase over yesterday, but that is because that includes a substantial number of the remainder of the prison population tests that we referenced the last couple of days. We've now done over 123,000 tests and have almost 4,200 Tennesseans that have recovered from this illness. I did want to give you a brief update on our hospital asset availability because we haven't talked about that in a while. We currently have 33% of our inpatient capacity available, 32% of our ICU capacity available, and 75% of our ventilator capacity available statewide. A couple of brief comments about weekend testing. We now have the results of all of last weekend's test, and as a reminder, we did 11,230 tests last weekend over 33 sites. Interestingly, only 1.2% of everyone that was tested positive. Less than 100 people, or around 100 people that were tested positive. That's a really good sign. The other point of note is we have more weekend sites coming up this Saturday and Sunday. We have 18 sites available, 10 on Saturday, 8 on Sunday, and as the governor mentioned, the exact sites with addresses are listed on our website. And while we do have fewer sites this weekend, we have expanded the capacity in each of those sites, not only more lanes, but also more people. So we feel confident that we will be able to handle, and we are preparing for, the same number, if not more, tests to be done this weekend as we did last weekend. Finally, don't forget that you can get testing every weekday at your local health department, so you don't have to wait for one of these weekend events, and so we encourage you to take that option as well.
Thank you, Dr. Piercy, and thank you for each one of you commissioners that came and gave a report. As you all know, they will be available here for answering our questions. We'll move to the question and answer phase. We also have members of our Unified Command Group here to talk about any of the efforts that are being made with regard to TEMA, that TEMA is making with regard to the tornadoes in the Chattanooga area, or the extra capacity that's being built out, any of the work that Unified Command Group is doing. So we'll have a number of folks here to answer any questions, and we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Governor. First, we'll go to Natalie Allison with the Tennessean. Natalie, your line is open.
Hi, Governor.
Hey, Natalie.
I wanted to ask you, hello, have you spoken to the White House about Tennessee's plans to reopen next week?
Well, we have talked with the White House on a number of phone calls that have been between the president and or the vice president and governors. I have not had a specific call directly myself with either of those two one-on-one, but we're working with their team. We've had conversations with multiple members of their medical team and others that are engaged in this fight against COVID-19. So we've had a connection, and certainly we have used federal guidance to inform our decisions going forward.
Then a second question, and this may be for Director McWhorter. Can you walk us through the process right now of obtaining antibody tests? I know you have mentioned those are supposed to be coming in a few weeks, but just practically, what is that process for securing those? And then about how many do you think Tennessee can secure? And then what would realistically that look like as far as availability to the general public? And who could get those?
Yeah, Natalie, I'm going to let Dr. Piercy answer that first, and then Stuart can add if necessary.
Yeah, actually, I plan to talk about antibody testing on Monday, sort of give somewhat of a deeper dive like I did a couple of days ago on contact tracing. So I think you might find that interesting. But in the meantime, we have ordered several thousand antibody tests and are working on a strategy to roll that out. A little preview of what we'll talk about on Monday. There are a lot of antibody tests on the market that are not FDA approved and that really are not reliable. So I want to be able to provide guidance on which are the good ones and which ones we should avoid, and some things that antibody tests tell us and some things that they don't. We are also going to be issuing guidance to providers statewide. You know, we're the licensing agency for all healthcare providers, to give them a better sense of the tests that they should rely upon and ones that perhaps they should avoid. So sorry to punt it a few days down the road, but we do intend to give guidance on that early next week.
Next, we'll go to Jonathan Mattice with EAP. Jonathan, your line is open.
Hey, Governor, thanks for taking my question. It looks like Bledsoe County Correctional Complex now has 345 positive cases and another 1,000 that are still pending. I was wondering if, regarding that, is there a consideration to move towards testing all inmates across the state prison system, since the majority of facilities have not had any testing at this point, or at least minimal testing?
So you're correct. We are watching the Bledsoe numbers, and there is a substantial number of positive cases at Bledsoe. And those are reflected in the Bledsoe County numbers because the prison is in Bledsoe County. So when you look at the case-by-case or the county-by-county breakdown, you will see the prison numbers in that. That is reflective of at least 3 different populations: the inmate population, the staff at that prison, as well as just the community at large. I will note that the community at large is a very, very small proportion of the entire Bledsoe County number, and you need to keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers. Regarding other prisons, I think we talked about it a few days ago, but there have been a couple of other prisons that have had small clusters: Northwest Correctional and the Turney Center, and 1 or 2, just very low number at Trousdale. But Northwest and Turney, we have done the expanded, what we call unit-based testing, where we've tested several hundred there. Interestingly, I don't have the very final numbers, but we have almost all of those results back. And interestingly, those percentages were really low there, which is a good thing. It's very different than it was at Bledsoe. We haven't had any positive cases at any other prisons, but we have done testing at other prisons of symptomatic inmates. And if any of the inmates there or staff come positive, we will do that tiered-based approach just like we've done at the other prisons.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Andy Scher with the Times Free Press. Andy, your line is open.
Thank you, Governor. Let me ask you this, in terms of how this order on affecting retail and restaurants and going forward works out. So this applies to 89 of the 90 states, 95 counties, except for the big 6. I mean, in Hamilton County, you've got the mayor of Hamilton County who's interested in going along with whatever guidance that you provide, whereas the mayor says he's still assessing and has not made a decision, and he wants to be very careful. So who prevails in that case?
You know, we have been talking with every one of those mayors and all of the counties that are not included in our 89 counties. The 89 counties are those who have health departments that are overseen by the state, and those other counties have their own health departments that are overseen otherwise. And we've actually been very pleased with and working very closely with each one of those mayors as they develop their own strategies in counties and cities about how it is that they're going to safely reopen their economies with regard to the guidelines that they will be providing for businesses and the timing. One of the things that we're trying to do as leaders in this state is to work together, and we have, in fact, done that in a very effective way. So I think you're going to be seeing plans from those other 6 counties as time rolls on. You're going to see plans that they've developed, and those are plans that have been shared with us, and we will share with them our plans so that we make sure that we can open our state together safely. And so I commend the leaders in those counties for the work that they're doing.
Well, I mean, at this point, I mean, if the mayor, if the mayor of Hamilton County and 7 of the 10 cities want to go along with your guidance, for the other 89, beginning Monday and Tuesday, then and Wednesday. I mean, does that mean? I mean, you could wind up with a situation where you've got one set of standards in Hamilton County, unincorporated, and in 7 of the smaller cities, and then the largest city, Chattanooga, you've got stricter guidance.
Yeah.
Do you not?
Well, what we have is, let me just say, Andy, what we have is leaders across this state working together to roll out plans that are going to be complementary to one another. We see that happening. That's what's going to happen. That's what we expect to happen. And our work together with those mayors has been it's been very encouraging to me. So I think that's what we're going to see. There are a number of scenarios, but that's what we're going to see as it happens across the next few weeks.
And if I could follow up with one more question. In Georgia, of course, the governor there, was opening up, bowling alleys, beaches, and everything else, and got sort of a rap on the knuckles, so to speak, from President Trump. I mean, are you looking at this point? Are you looking at doing bowling alleys and barber shops and nail salons and a lot of close, hands-on type activity, business activity?
Yeah, what we're looking at doing is a phased reopening that safely allows our economy to open in steps. And we announced today that those first steps, we're going to be giving real clear guidance on restaurants and retails, businesses, and then we'll make decisions about other businesses. As we said, we want to have the majority of businesses open before May 1st, and that will actually happen when we open retail and restaurants. Those are the vast majority of businesses that have been closed across the state. And some businesses will not be able to open safely immediately, but we'll be making those decisions in the days ahead.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Sergio Martinez Beltran with WPLN. Sergio, your line is open.
Thank you, Guillaume, and good afternoon, Governor. As you know, the mayor of Nashville presented today his plan to reopen business in Davidson County. It's a step-by-step plan. It's also a phased plan, like you're talking about the state one. But I'm wondering, I mean, can you go a little bit deeper on like what's the plan for reopening? I mean, before moving to the next phase, is the state expected to maybe see a decrease in the average number of positive cases before moving to the next opening phase?
Well, I think the most important thing is phase one. So, I have for weeks taken the approach that we need to follow data in order to make decisions. That's how we made decisions on the front end of this, and that's how we'll make decisions on the back end of this, is take one step at a time based on the information and the data that we have. The data that we have right now shows that we are prepared to take the first step in phase one. And for us, what that means is opening up retail and restaurants. We'll be making decisions about the remainder of businesses that will be opened in this phase one, and then we will follow data. And we will follow guidelines, and we will watch what's happening across our state, because the public safety is of utmost importance to us. The safety of Tennesseans, the way that we can do this going forward with social distancing. Social distancing is a critical component of every one of our guidelines that we'll be bringing forth for opening each one of these businesses. That's the way that we'll remain safe, but we'll also watch daily the information that will be provided to us from the Tennessee Hospital Association, from case counts, from areas all across the state. Every county will be watching, and that is what will inform the next steps that we take in this phased reopening of our economy.
Follow up, Governor, how do we make sure that we don't mess up this first phase and that we don't have to go back to a safer at home? I mean, are we requiring employees to wear masks, or like employers to check the temperature of the employees? How are we making sure we don't go back?
Yeah, so tomorrow we'll be actually putting out our first round of detailed guidelines for businesses, for employees, for customers, and those will include a wide array of safety measures that will have to be implemented in order for us to protect the public. And they will include temperature checks and masks and social distancing requirements. There will be a number of things that you will see clearly detailed in our plan. It's one of the reasons that we've worked so hard over the last couple weeks, and even previous to that with our Industry Advisory Council. We've worked so hard to provide a very detailed plan that's well thought through, because what is most important is the safety of Tennesseans. We want them to feel safe when they go back to work. We want them to feel safe when they go to a restaurant or go to a retail outlet. And thus we have taken some very clear steps to provide those guidelines, and we'll be providing detail of those tomorrow.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Chris Bungard with WKRN. Chris, your line is open.
Governor, yesterday I believe you talked about the guidance on how to spend the federal stimulus money, at least a good hunk of it. Have you had any more guidance or any guidance since then, and when do you expect to get it? I believe yesterday you talked about perhaps next week, but I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, well, there are pieces of guidance coming every day. As Commissioner Schwinn said, there was guidance just today from the Department of Education around some of those funds. I was on a phone call today with our federal delegation, the senators and congressmen from all across our state who are engaged in the federal level, and we have daily interaction with what's happening there. So as that guidance comes out, then we utilize that guidance to make decisions, but much of it is yet to come out, but we do think it's coming in the next few days, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Marta Aldrich with Chalkbeat. Marta, your line is open.
Thank you. I have two questions for Commissioner Schwinn. This is about CARES funding for schools.
Sure.
First, it's a local decision how to spend their shares of the federal pot that totals about $234 million.
Mm-hmm.
Will you encourage districts to spend their money on learning recovery programs that could extend the school day or the school year, or other ways of adding instructional time? And second, the state will keep about $26 million of the CARES education money. How do you expect to spend that portion to support students in schools through this time?
Sure. So great questions. I think, as you know, we've had the guidance from the U.S. Department of Education for just over an hour and a half now. So we are certainly looking through all of the assurance that have come with that. There are 4 different sections of assurances that we are reviewing. That will help to guide any guidance that we then discuss with our local districts. We have been in conversations with our superintendents. We speak with them 3 times per week. We also have individual calls through our core offices. We certainly have been in contact with advocacy groups and organizations across the state, and we do expect to engage with legislative leadership related to the best use of funds at the state level in terms of our state set aside, and then also any kind of direction, guidance, or support we need to offer to our districts. What I will say is that in every conversation I've had, whether email, text, or phone calls with our superintendents, we are all on the same page that these funds, understanding they are one-time relief funds, must be used to support the students and educators in the state of Tennessee. That is our goal, that will remain our goal, and I think any type of planning that accompanies these funds will have that 100% in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Ainsley Daniel with WJHL. Ainsley, your line is open.
Hi, Governor Lee. Thank you again for taking our questions. I have a couple for you. So for the first one, according to the federal guidelines, businesses are encouraged to take temperatures, provide masks, and amp up sanitation as we open back up for phase 1. However, most of these items and resources are out of stock. So how do you suggest businesses safely open back up if these items are still largely unavailable?
Yeah. Well, as I said, tomorrow we're going to be providing very specific guidance on how businesses will open up. Multiple industries have different needs. Multiple industries have different guidelines with how it is that they can safely operate and how they can provide that safety to both their customers and to their employees. And those are the types of things that we'll be laying out tomorrow morning.
And a follow-up to that, what are the local government's roles in facilitating phase one and making sure everyone does have those resources and that these businesses are abiding by these rules?
Yeah, what we really believe is that as we develop these guidelines, we want to offer support where we can to businesses to be able to follow these guidelines. That support will look different ways depending on the business, depending on the community. And we're working with industry groups, in fact, and those industry groups themselves will be providing support for their own industries. But all of that will be developed and it will be determined over the next couple of weeks as we provide guidance starting tomorrow morning and as those companies begin to open starting Monday. There are a lot of companies, a lot of industries that'll be opening in different times over the next several weeks. And that's how we will determine just how those businesses will operate safely.
And finally, how long do you expect Tennessee to be in phase one of reopening, and do you have a goal?
The goal is when the data shows that we are in a place where we can open and go to phase two. Just like all of the decisions that we have made along the way, we want to be very careful. We want to be very logical and methodical about how we make these decisions, and that is what we'll do going forward, just in the same way that we did to get to where we are today. And by the way, where we are today is because of the efforts of Tennesseans. You have done what had to be done. You have done your part to stay home. People have made tremendous sacrifice. Many people have had great economic loss as a result of this. So Tennesseans have paid a price and worked hard to get here. But where we are here is at the place that we can begin to do this phased reopening, and we're grateful that we're at that spot.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Carice Jackman with WSMV. Carice, your line is open.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, Governor and everyone. Thank you again for answering our questions. My first question goes out basically to the Department of Labor. You know, earlier today, the Department of Labor tweeted out that they've seen a significant, well, for the second consecutive week, there's been a decrease in the number of people filing for unemployment. But a lot of our viewers and a lot of people that have responded to that see that as a joke because they can't get through and they cannot get processed. So my question is, what is being done to help those people get processed? Is that being calculated as well in terms of the amount of people that are filing for that and are still in a state of limbo? And then what is being done to help with the technical issues that people continue to have?
Yes, so let me take the second one first. We are in the process of doing another needed upgrade for the system, and when the system works well, things work well all the way around. We're starting to stagger certifications by Social Security number, which has helped us quite a bit, and manage the scheduled downtime so we can process payments until we get that extra computing capacity that we need. So that part of the equation is making sure, as I talked about earlier, that we meet that challenge of that upgrade. In terms of new claims coming in, if there is a delay, there could be. We do know, again, that there's somewhere in the range of 70,000 or so who are on that PUA, sole proprietor standpoint, who, like I mentioned earlier, we will begin processing those for payment, and then within the next day begin that process, and they should be able to see their benefits received next week.
And then I have one final question. When it comes to the amount of money that the Department of Labor has to help send out unemployment, what is the total number that we're noticing? And has that been brought down from the federal government in terms of how much money does the Department of Labor have to send out all these unemployment claims?
So that's a very good question, and there's a few different buckets of money. Any of the money for the additional $600 is federal. Money for the programs like to provide benefits for the sole proprietors and 1099 employees is all federal as well, including the extra $600 for those folks. The Traditional claims insurance is handled by insurance trust fund, which is basically a savings account. And it's in really good shape. It's one of the best shapes in the country, but we are constantly monitoring that because of the volume, the unprecedented volume that we have. And so that is something that we're monitoring, but at the start of this, we were in very good shape, a lot better really than many other states.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for questions today, Governor. If you would like to make a closing statement.
Thank you. A lot of information today, a lot of work being done, but most of the work is being done by Tennesseans out there, working hard to help in their communities, whether it's relief for people in tornado, whether it's relief for their neighbors suffering, whether it's relief of local governments assisting those in Tennessee. There's a lot of work being done to help one another get through this pandemic. We certainly are doing what we can do, making every effort we can to serve Tennesseans. We have great challenges ahead of us, but we have made tremendous progress. We're very encouraged with where we are. Take heart, because we are moving forward, and the reason we're able to do that is because of what you have accomplished and what you have done and how you have done your part to stay apart. So thank you, and we will return again tomorrow morning with a special update on guidance for opening our businesses next week.